Aloha, hey, it's Julie Zemelis from 365 Hawaii Real Estate Minute, and we are here today with Kyle Nishiyama from Knudsen & Associates, and you might remember him from our investment video. And today we are talking about buying land in Hawaii. And one of the reasons we are here today is because we're sitting on a 28 parcel of land in South Hawaii that Kyle has on the market.
Thank you so much, Julie. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come check this property out. The reason I invited you here today is just because it's such a unique parcel of land. Like you said, it's 28 acres. We're just south of Miloli'i. We're still in the South Kona district, just outside of Ka'u in a little town called Honolulu. And so in this area, there's just bigger land lots, and it's zoned A5A, and so it's 28 acres and it's fully subdividable, which is hard to come by in Hawaii.
Right.
And so it's just a unique opportunity for us to discuss land and subdividable land and all of that good stuff.
So the next thing we want to talk about is being able to subdivide land. And just so you know, and I think I've told you this before, I get a lot of people asking me, hey, I'm going to come in and I'm going to buy an acre and I'm going to create little tiny houses all over this land and then be able to be like the landlord over all of this. And I said, no, you can't subdivide land like that. They're like, oh, well, how do you subdivide land? Who decides you do that, and what's the permitting process for that?
Yeah. You know, I wish that we could all just buy big parcels and bring as many tiny homes in as we want, but unfortunately that's not the case. And so like here, for example, I feel like in Hawaii, you know, the county is going to be involved in that subdividing process. So you would work with a contractor. You're going to want to get with a lot of professionals who can help you with that permitting process. You would go to county and apply for the subdividing permit. There will be like a public notice, and it does take some time, but overall, for this property specifically, it's not that complicated, and as long as you have the right professionals to help you, they'll facilitate most of that work on your behalf. It's just a little bit of a time-consuming process. I will say too, with this property specifically, you can't subdivide any less than those 5 acres because of the zoning being A5A. So although you have 20 acres over there, with agriculture properties specifically, you can only have one residential structure per ag property, and the smallest parcel you could subdivide down to would be 5 acres. So 4 homes on each on 5 acres.
Right. So you can't just come in here and buy 20 acres and decide that you're going to now be the
20 person.
Yeah, the campground landowner
Yeah.
of putting a bunch of little houses around the whole property.
Unfortunately, probably not. You might get flagged. Yeah.
So I think people sometimes too, because our Ireland is super rural, really, that people do think that they can come in and basically do what they want with the land when they buy it. But it seems from all the work I've seen that there is really strong rules on a lot of this stuff.
There are. And I will say too, with this location, it's unique. With some different areas, like if you were north of the airport, for example, or if you were headed out towards Waikoloa and you wanted to find something subdividable, there's not as much rainfall in that area. There's some properties even up in Holualoa that potentially would need water commitments to be run up the mountain. And so here, this entire property is on water catchment. If you did do the subdividing, it's not an uncommon thing for people to do water catchment systems. And then you could still have overhead power and electrical brought down. But yeah, that way the subdividing is not as difficult. You don't have to dig wells. You don't have to do a water system. And then here in Hawaii too, we do a lot of septic tanks and stuff like that. So they're self-sufficient properties, they're eco-efficient properties, and they are sustainable properties as well. And so, yeah, you could do solar. You don't even need to plug into the grid. You could do it totally off-grid on an ag property.
That's
so
great.
That's cool.
Well, and also I do have people saying, boy, I would love to move to Hawaii, plant a whole bunch of fruit trees, live off the grid, and just kind of like zone down. This area, all of this part of the island, you can do that because there's enough rainfall to support your water too.
Absolutely. At this elevation, at least, we're just above 1,600 feet where we're sitting right now, and we're within that rain belt still. I think no matter where you are on the island, if you're down near sea level, the rain levels are going to vary and stuff like that. But this high up in the mountain, as you can see around us, it's pretty green and lush. There's a lot of rain that comes through here, and so, yeah, you wouldn't need necessarily to be on county.
Because before I moved to an island, I never thought about that it was hot at the ocean without that much rainfall. And as you go up the mountain, you know, I know it might be shocking that doesn't make sense, but you don't think about it.
These drastic elevation changes.
That you could get 30 inches a month here and get like 0.5 down the ocean.
Absolutely.
And that completely changes your livability in terms of trying to get water to your plants and to yourself, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So keep an eye on that too, because like you were talking about, there's a lot of people who think that they're going to buy a couple acres near Kona, but they have to get water credits, and you got to get your well. And Eric and
And
I,
building that infrastructure too is really
right,
expensive.
it is expensive.
So, yeah.
But we were we live at 750 feet underneath
Yeah.
Hulawaloa, and we were walking on this trail, and we found out there used to be a little cane experience where they had a little cane train down in there, and the guy said, "Oh my gosh, I am going to make myself rich by planting sugar cane," and it lasted for 2 years.
Wow.
There wasn't enough water.
That just didn't rain down there.
It just doesn't rain enough.
Oh,
and
wow.
he thought that just because he lived on an island and they were killing it over Hamakua, that he would just bring it closer to Kona and think that he
is
was
so
going to do
funny.
it, and it went bankrupt.
Just doesn't work that
yeah,
way.
so water is
Yeah.
everything in Hawaii.
It really is. And what side of the island? Like you said, on Hamakua side, you're on that more rainier side. Kona is just technically drier. The west side is the drier side of the island. So.
Okay, so let's talk about how you actually are going to purchase your land. Let's talk about financing.
Okay.
So what does it take to buy open land or lots of land that actually has a structure on it? What's the story?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. So I will say right now for this property where we're at, because there's a residential home here sitting on 28 acres, you could purchase this with a loan, and you could use conventional financing or maybe jumbo. You could easily do that at this property if you qualified. Talk to a mortgage lender and see first, of course, but you could do that here and then subdivide after the fact because the home's already here. If hypothetically, I know we're talking about purchasing land in Hawaii and all of that good stuff. And so if you're watching this video and you're thinking about just purchasing land in general or purchasing land that may be subdividable down the road and it's raw land, that's where it gets a little bit more complicated to find financing. It does exist. Don't think that it doesn't exist. You just have to shop around. And the one thing that I will say where I've had clients be the most successful is with what's called a construction loan. And so I know that there's a minimum requirement for down payment with a construction loan, but what you do in that event is you don't just finance the purchase of the land, you finance the cost of the build. And so then you can take out a mortgage. Say you purchase land for $250,000, you want to spend $550 on the build, you take out a mortgage for $800,000, and then you say you put 30 or 35% on $800,000. So sometimes your down payment may even be more than the cost of the land up front, but you're financing all the costs for the build. There are stipulations to that product where you have to start building within, I believe, 72 months. There are some other different restrictions. It may be at a higher interest rate. Again, talk to a qualified mortgage lender who knows what they're doing, who has these products available, who can break it down for you. But there are options that exist if you're looking to finance for land in general. Land loans are out there. Another option would be private lending or seller financing, like a purchase money mortgage or something of that nature. We see that happen with land out in Hawaii occasionally, because sometimes land, generally speaking, in a balanced market, land in Hawaii does take a little bit longer to move. And if the seller is motivated and a buyer wants to do it with a purchase money mortgage or an agreement of sale, that can sometimes get the ball rolling a little bit faster.
Okay, so what happens in this world? We have death and taxes. So understanding your tax burden on land is an important thing as well. Can you tell us a little bit about what people are expected to pay for taxes for land?
Sure. In Hawaii, if the property is zoned ag and you have a home there, it's $9 right now, at least, as we're filming this video today. It's $9.35 per 1,000 of assessed value. That is a little bit higher than today's residential tax assessed value, which is $6.10 per 1,000 of assessed value. But with that, you have the opportunity to apply for what's called a tax exemption. And ag properties can qualify for those. There are certain requirements that you need to meet. But talk to a CPA, talk to your tax advisor, talk to a professional accountant about that. And I'm sure that you can get great recommendations on how to save at the end of the year on your property taxes. But yeah, overall, it's not too bad. I've had clients tell me that overall, in general, the property taxes in Hawaii aren't terrible compared to some other states in the continental U.S.
New Jersey's the worst.
Yeah, New Jersey's, I've heard of New Jersey being pretty bad. I'm from Washington. I love my Washington people, but I know Washington has pretty high property tax as well. There's a few states that are a little bit more significant than even Hawaii, so not too bad.
But now get this though. We had a friend that had a bunch of property, and what they did was they put a cow and 2 goats on the property, and then got a pretty good tax savings on their thing. So that's basically some of the exemptions, or what you do with the land. right?
Totally.
So you can have livestock or you can sell some of the
Absolutely.
farm products.
And there's an application process. Without getting too far into the woods, there's an application process, and then there is some follow through too from the county to make sure that what you say you're doing is what you're actually doing at the property. But yeah, I mean, I know people in the past who've had 25 banana trees and sold bananas, and who knows how many bananas they're really selling at the end of the day, but if they're there and they're available for sale, then you can't really say that they're not selling bananas, right?
So plants and trees, right? And then also real quick, because some people are trying to figure out maybe that they're looking at that land at Kahala Ranch, and they had used that as some ag land experience where they were having cows running around, and then they cut
Yes.
that off, right?
Yes.
So that is no longer ag, right? So now you're going to be paying more to be able to build a house in Kahala Ranch than you were before when the cows were running around.
So that's
that work?
interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I'll have to look into that more and see, because I actually haven't heard about Kohala Ranch's ag use. It would come down to what the state use is and then what the county use is, because if I'm not mistaken, the county is still zoning it as ag, but if the state use has maybe been reclassified to like urban or something different, then it could be a change. And so knowing the state use and the county use is really important. But yeah, that does happen sometimes. And in Hawaii, we're, especially on Big Island, because the island is so huge, we have so much conservation land here. We have so much land set aside for just the state. But ag lands, at the beginning of when they started doing these zoning maps and creating these areas, ag was kind of a catch-all. And so if they didn't know exactly what to do with this property or this area or what the future would look like, they classified it as ag and assumed that 50 or 100 years down the road, there would be a reclassification or a rezoning process. And that has yet to take place. But yeah, there's a lot of areas like Kohala Ranch, for example, that may be zoned as ag, and they're not the most pristine ag lands. You know what I'm saying? Or like even in Hokulea, when you're coming up bypass, beautiful area, beautiful homes, beautiful properties, all zoned for ag, and nobody's farming over there.
Right.
It's a dry area. You could maybe do some crops, but something like this or Holualoa, where it's really lush and beautiful, that's really where you should be doing the most ag production, where you can take advantage of the soil and the rain and use the property for its highest and best use.
Let's talk about maintenance issue when you own land. And when people say, "Oh, I'm going to come to Hawaii and I'm going to get myself a couple acres."
Yeah.
What does that really look like?
Yeah, it's totally fair, and it's definitely something that people who are looking at land should have realistic expectations of what to anticipate. And so I love that we're going to talk about it, because Hawaii is such a unique place, and the tropics bring a lot of unique things, whether it be elements, hurricane season, earthquakes, all those things, right? But then also
Centipedes.
yeah, the pests. That's what I was just going to say, was pest control, which is something to be aware of. Centipedes, red fire ants, termites, carpenter bees, all kinds of fun stuff that can come up. And then beyond that too, with again, just talking about the land itself and natural elements in Hawaii, you've got pigs here, you've got chickens here, you've got cats here that are all kind of roaming about the island. You know what I mean? And so just being aware of goats too that can come in off the road. And so just being able to protect your space, fully fenced is great. It's obviously the first recommendation. But for ongoing maintenance, you're going to definitely want somebody who's going to be able to upkeep that property with the right equipment, having a D9, having a tractor, having those farm pieces available to you, so that if you have to maintain a long driveway into your 5-acre parcel and it's not fully graded and paved, and a tree falls down, or there's a flash flood, or something happens, you have to be prepared to get yourself out, unless you're going to call for help every single time. But, these are things that buyers, I think sometimes they dream about having the vision of being in Hawaii, and then they get all the way out here and we take them to see these properties and they're like on this wild ride wondering, where are we going? We're going to see that house you love so much. And if you're purchasing land in a rural area of the island, just being prepared for not only the elements, but the natural occurrences that are bound to happen. And then also too, I mean, we can talk about the growth and the upkeep of like just the crops in general.
Yeah.
I mean,
coffee. And let's talk about labor.
Yeah, that's another thing too, is finding people who not are just qualified and know what they're doing in your orchards or in your farm, but are able to be punctual and hopefully polite and maybe professional too. Is that so much to ask? But yeah, just
show up.
Finding good people is really important, and it can be hard sometimes. And so yeah, definitely having the resources to take care of what you're purchasing. I've sold 0.7 acres with over 100 coffee trees on it. We're sitting on 28 acres with just over 100 coffee trees on it. You don't need tons and tons and tons of land to do a lot. You just have to be able to work the land for its what it's able to do and work it to its full potential. And so, yeah, don't be discouraged. Don't feel like you need 5 acres. You really don't need 5 acres. That's a huge piece.
It's a lot. It's a lot to take. And then, 5 acres of lava land is definitely 5 different acres of tropical jungle,
yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Because it comes up so fast. I don't think people, especially on the mainland, you have no idea how fast this stuff grows. And when you're saying, "Oh, my maintenance to have someone come in here and cut the stuff down is $1,500 a month," what? It's like, well, because it'd be completely different.
Rains.
Yeah. So every month they're coming back into the new jungle that they just cut down last month, right?
Exactly. And it's interesting too, because no matter where you are on the island, it's going to be different. If you're in South Hilo, if you're down near Volcano, yeah, you could probably find anywhere from 5 to 20 acres for less than $300,000 or $350,000. But in Kona, you can't probably find 7,500 square feet for less than $250,000 right now. The land is just so different, and the value, it changes. And then, like we were talking about Kohala Ranch a little bit earlier, up in Kohala Ranch where it's a little bit drier, prices will be different, and the use will be different. And then down here, you could do the endless opportunities when you're in a place like this is really special. And that's why people are drawn towards the Kona coffee belt and inside of this rain belt, because it's so green, it's so lush. You can literally grow anything and it'll thrive.
Okay, so you guys might be looking on the mainland towards Hawaii, and you're seeing it on MLS about land. And we're going to talk about this for a second, is the fact that each land can be ready for you in different places.
Yes.
One, there's raw land, right? And then there's land that's been grubbed, and then there's land that's been graded, and then there's land that has utilities and infrastructure put into it. And then all those different things that happen obviously affect the price.
Absolutely.
Is that all that information available on the MLS when people are looking at land? Is it all there?
Hopefully it's available on MLS. It would really be up to those listing agents and how descriptive they are, the photos. You have to sometimes do some digging to get additional information. Usually though, like if there's a land listing with no residential property, it's just going to be categorized as land. And so they're all going to fall under that one category. And so, if you're searching for something super specific within a certain price point, you might have only a few options to browse from, and it'll be easy to see the different aspects of each one. But if you have a really broad general search engine or searching parameter, and you're looking in an area where there's a lot of land available, it could take some digging to really find. But like you said, price is going to be a huge determining factor on that. And yeah, when the land is totally raw and nothing been done to it, you can usually get it for a better price. Sometimes people actually who own homes that have been newly built or developed, they want to buy the raw land right next door so that they can just have that extra privacy, and they'll never clear or develop it. Other times you'll see where the land owner has they had intentions of building at one time, so they started to clear it. Maybe they graded it. Maybe they've even poured a concrete foundation. Best case scenario, they've even started running utilities to the property, or at least pulled permits to do so, and then plans change. And so once the starting of that process has begun, once they've broken ground and started to move things around, move the earth around, make plans, the price is going to go up. And at that point, you just have to kind of decide, like, at this stage within this land's process, will I be able to come in and accomplish my goals? We were talking about before with the labor. If you have the tools and the resources and you are able to do the clearing of the lot, why not buy raw land? That way you can design your own driveway. You can pick where you want your house pad to be within the boundary lines and in a buildable area. And you can be more creative, and you kind of can take control in that sense. But if you don't have all of those tools, or you don't want to spend the additional time, or you don't care about the customization factor of that, get something that's totally cleared and then plant later and let your landscaping mature, something like that. I really love the feeling of going down a nice windy driveway, and it feels like all of those trees are just, in Hawaii we have like the ohia and the tree fern and, beautiful, beautiful kakui nut and just different trees. And so it's really fun to drive through those driveways and feel like it's like an ancient property where you haven't, nothing's been touched.
It's not all cleared out when you first walk in. But then there's some people who, like I noticed down in Hawaii Paradise Park, HPP, those lots are like, an acre maybe, and it's just there's so much growth all around
Yes.
it. It's nice when you walk onto a piece of property. It's clear.
Yes.
That way you're not. You can just go. Okay, I can see where people are going to put my house. The people can come in and just start get to work right away. Instead of coming in and seeing raw land sitting in the middle of a residential area, and then that's your responsibility.
And one thing in that area too that you have to really be careful of is the albizas. We'll just talk about albizas for a second because it is an invasive species here in Hawaii. They're beautiful trees, but they grow really fast, really tall, really quickly, and so they are dangerous. And so if there's like a huge albizia on the back of the lot and you're getting ready to build, you just want to maybe probably be intentional about the removal of the albizia so that it doesn't fall onto your roof line or fall into the structure later. And so a lot of times in this area, if there's a bunch of albizia trees on the property, sellers sometimes will just clear the whole thing because that is a pain to deal with later. And so, yeah, different aspects will draw people to do different things.
So you want to get your land because you want to make some money on it, but you actually want to enjoy it more than you want to work it. So there is a concept here called gentleman farming.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So, yeah, I mean, my interpretation of it, and I think that it's open to interpretation, the term a gentleman farmer, but to me, I would say if there's somebody out there who is passionate about agriculture, they want a healthy lifestyle, they want to live a fresh diet and eat fresh foods and have those things available for themselves and for their family, but they don't necessarily want to be an intimate part of getting their hands dirty and the production of the crop and the harvesting of the crop. That's really common here, and that happens a lot. And so you can find those people to come through, and whether it be at the beginning of the season to do the planting, later in the season to do the maintenance and the cutback, or at the end of season to do the harvesting. Sometimes it's fun to go out with the family and the kids and do a little bit, but you're not going to want to harvest thousands of coffee trees. You're gonna need help to do that. And say you don't even want to do the drying, you don't want to have your own roastery, that's fine too, because you can pay somebody to pick it, and then you can sell those cherries to somebody who wants those cherries, and it'll pay for the cost of the picking. Plus, you'll still make a little money at the end.
And it helps pay for the taxes.
Exactly, totally. And honestly, too, if there was somebody who was really community driven and you just wanted to harvest a few avocados, a few bananas, a few things, and go up to the farmer's market every week, you could really engage with this local community and become a member of this local community with just the things that you find in your own backyard.
Yeah,
which is really fun.
And I've heard of people basically having opportunities for people who really want the fruit to come out and pick the fruit, and then they just get a piece of the portion, and the person goes and sells it on the market.
That happens all the time, where people who do the farmers markets are just looking for more variety. And so, like, for example, at this property, there's some really unique stuff like cashews and cherries, and there's jaboti kava, and there's mangoes and coffee and all the like things that you would expect to find in Hawaii. But then there's some unique stuff too, and so things that aren't regularly found at farmers markets would be really desirable for them to come and take from you, and then they'll go sell it. You don't even have to be the one to sit there and sell it.
Right.
Other
So
people
yeah,
will
like
do it.
dragon fruit right behind us.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
And then also just if you guys just, I don't know, if this is probably not for Kyle, but just so you guys know that if you do want to grow some interesting things and find out what's really valuable, the Tropical Growers Fruit Association is an incredible resource because it'll tell you what elevation things grow.
Yes.
And also you can ask questions in their group forum on Facebook, and you can find out what you could plant that actually people want. So you could actually then get top dollar for highest and best use.
I love that. You know, another idea that I just want to throw out there too for anybody who's watching, if you're not really passionate about fruit or vegetable farming, another really popular one here is florist farming.
Oh, yeah.
And so you could plant tons and tons and tons of roses or carnations or whatever your favorite flower is.
Anthuriums.
Lots of different flowers.
Okay.
And yeah, and weddings and hotels, and people will buy flowers for huge prices in Hawaii. The wedding season goes year round. There's no discounts for weddings here. And, you know, those brides really want the white tropicals. And so, the florists are always looking for new flower farmers too. And that's another really fun way to just turn this property into such a beautiful, beautiful place to be, or really any property into such a beautiful place to be with a wonderful garden, and then sell those fresh cut stems to other people.
Being in Hawaii, what some people might not know and understand is that obviously this land's been around for quite some time, and there's been some Hawaiian activity, and so sometimes there are heiaus and different structures that are on property, basically archaeological experiences. So I wanted to tell you guys and give Kyle a chance to discuss it. that sometimes these structures are also on land that you might not know are there. So what happens when you buy a piece of land in Hawaii to make sure that it doesn't have something that's
Sure,
going to,
sure. So it's first of all, it's really important to just know whether or not the property has one of these archaeological sites on them. Like Julie said, being that Hawaii's history is such a long history, and the Native Hawaiians had villages everywhere, and so these places can be found throughout all of the islands, not just near the ocean, not just in the mountains, literally everywhere. And so what I will say as far as purchasing land, when you buy a piece of land and you're already in an established residential neighborhood or subdivision, that archaeological survey was most likely completed at the time of the establishment of the residential neighborhood. And so your land lot will have mention of it either in the preliminary title report or on the deed. And so that ARC site will be deeded. And so that's how you can first and foremost just try to see, do I have one? In the event that you're purchasing land such as this and you want to develop an archaeological site, that's when you would have to follow up with county and make sure, has there ever been done one in the history of this property? And if there hasn't, most likely you're going to need to do one. I personally would encourage you to do one. It's so important that we are respectful of these places and of the history and of people's ancestry, and you would never want to accidentally decimate somebody's, burial site or something like that just to build your home. And it's good to just be made aware of whatever's going on at that property. Not all heiaus and not all archaeological sites are burial sites. I just want to clear that up really quickly. Some of them are used for even like deities or for worship or for prayer or even just homes and trails and, just areas that were used for really positive things too. Sometimes you will find properties though that do have remains, and so that happens too, and it has to be disclosed, and it would be talked about during the escrow period, I'm sure.
Hey, so hopefully you've learned a lot about buying land in Hawaii, and thank you so much, Kyle, for being such a great resource for all of this. So if you do have more further questions, drop them in the comments below, and we can connect you to Kyle directly if you need to, and I'll put his contact information below too. And if you like this kind of information, please subscribe to our channel, and I will bring Kyle back in to talk about something else. So if you guys have topics you want to get covered, please make sure that we know about them. And if you want to support Eric's and my work and bringing this amazing information to you to help you, we do have a Patreon channel. You can go to Patreon, and it's 365 Hawaii, and you can support our work. So thank you very much for being part of this. Thank you. And you guys have good luck, and we'll bring you more information in the future.